He was just a human, until the princess risked everything for him. From the small balcony of his cramped apartment on Station Vera 9, he would watch ships drift past, wondering where they were going, what worlds they carried people to. He worked as a scavenger in the lower levels of the station, finding old tech and broken machinery that others discarded, fixing and selling them for a few credits. It was not a life of adventure, not like the stories he had read as a child. Yet he liked it, the rhythm of small, achievable tasks, the quiet hum of the station's systems. He often felt the station's pulse like a second heartbeat, the hum of engines, the chatter of automated docks, and the occasional shouts from traders echoed through the corridors. It was a noisy place, yet in its chaos, Elias found order. He knew every twist of the maintenance tunnels, every loose panel, every shortcut between the docking bays. It was knowledge he considered useless, yet somehow comforting. The day began like any other, with Elias scavenging a long-abandoned cargo bay filled with crates that had long since lost their labels. The metal creaked under his weight as he lifted panels, hoping to find something worth selling. His fingers brushed against an unfamiliar device buried under layers of dust. It looked delicate, polished, and far too intricate for anything the station's usual traders would carry. As he studied it, a sudden commotion echoed from the docking bay above. Curious, Elias climbed the maintenance ladder to the observation catwalk. He spotted a group of uniformed officers surrounding someone moving quickly through the crowd. The figure wore a hooded cloak, and their movements were careful, deliberate, but there was a tension in the way they moved, like a dancer trying not to step on the floor too heavily. Elias squinted. There was something about the person's posture, their careful steps, and the way the officers were clearly focused on them, that told him this was no ordinary traveler. He watched as the person, now clearly a woman, slipped into a narrow service tunnel. The officers hesitated at the entrance, scanning for any other exits. Elias, knowing the tunnels like the back of his hand, smiled faintly to himself. Maybe, just maybe, he could help. Elias waited for the officers to move away, then followed. He kept to the shadows, moving silently over the metal grates. Around a corner, he spotted the woman crouched behind a maintenance panel, catching her breath. Her hood fell slightly, revealing a face that seemed to glow even under the harsh lights of the tunnel. She looked up at him, startled, and for a moment their eyes met. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Elias said softly, keeping his hands visible. She studied him, her eyes narrowing in cautious curiosity. "You could be lying," she replied. Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight, a confidence Elias had rarely heard outside the wealthy trading decks. "I know these tunnels," he said. "I can help you get out of here without being seen." The woman paused, considering him. Then, as if deciding that trust was a necessary risk, she nodded. "All right, lead the way." Elias guided her through the labyrinthine tunnels, moving with the ease of someone who had memorized every twist and turn. Every step was measured, calculated to avoid the sensors and cameras that dotted the corridors. Occasionally, they would pause, listening to the distant footsteps of the officers searching for her. Each time, Elias found clever hiding spots, behind service ducts under machinery, through emergency hatches that had been left open by maintenance crews years ago. "You're very prepared," she said quietly after a while, her voice betraying a hint of admiration. "Not many would know these tunnels like you do," Elias shrugged. "I've lived here a long time. You learn things, notice things. It's useful sometimes." They reached a section of the station that connected to an old cargo lift. Elias motioned for her to step inside. The lift was slow, creaking as it descended toward the lower docking bays. He watched her carefully, noticing the way she seemed both aware and vulnerable at once. There was a kind of nobility in her posture, a presence that demanded attention even in the dim light of the lift. "Who are you really?" Elias asked, trying to make conversation. "You're not just someone trying to hide from security." Her eyes flicked to him, assessing, weighing how much to reveal. "I am Princess Liara of the Zinthari Empire," she said softly. Elias blinked. The words sounded like a title from one of those old stories about kings and queens, worlds away from the dingy corridors of Station Vera 9. Elias stared at her, trying to process the truth. Princess, of an empire that spanned systems. And here she was, hiding in the station's tunnels, relying on a human scavenger for help. The absurdity of it made him chuckle quietly. "Princess Liara," he said, tasting the name, "this is not exactly a safe place for someone like you." She gave a faint, wry smile. "No." but it is the only way to escape my pursuers. As the lift doors opened at the lower bay, they emerged into the dim glow of cargo lights. Elia's motioned toward a small freighter docked at the edge of the platform. Its hull was scratched, its engines old, but it was functional. He had used it for moving scavenged goods before. "Can you fly that?" she asked, glancing at the controls. "I can get us out," he replied. "Nothing fancy, nothing fast, but it'll work." She nodded, a quiet trust forming between them. Elias guided her to the cockpit, and together they ran through the basic procedures to start the freighter. The engines roared to life, echoing through the bay. It wasn't smooth, and the vibrations made her grip the seat, but they lifted off, moving toward the safety of the station's outer docks. As they left the station behind, the vastness of space spread before them. The stars glittered in a way that made the world feel infinite and full of possibilities. Elias glanced at Liara, who seemed absorbed in the view, her face a mixture of relief and wonder. "You know," Elias said, breaking the silence, "most people wouldn't believe this. They think humans are small, weak, but sometimes knowing a place, understanding it, noticing the small details, that's enough to make a difference." Liara looked at him, her eyes shining with curiosity. "I've underestimated humans before," she admitted softly. "Perhaps I was wrong," Elias smiled. It wasn't often that royalty admitted being wrong, and somehow the acknowledgement felt powerful, like a key turning in a lock he hadn't realized was there. The journey through space was slow, measured, each movement cautious. They had to avoid patrols, sensors, and the occasional pirate scout. Elias found himself thinking creatively, using the station's old schematics, modifying the freighter's signals to mimic merchant traffic. Every small decision was a puzzle, and with each success, Liara's trust in him grew. By the time the first day ended, they had reached the edge of a neutral sector. Here, the stars seemed closer, the blackness around them deeper. Elias felt a thrill he hadn't experienced in years. This was not just scavenging, this was adventure, though quiet, careful, and deliberate. Liara turned to him, her voice soft. "You've done more than anyone could expect. I don't know what I would have done without you." Elias shrugged, trying to hide the warmth that spread through him. "I'm just me, but sometimes just being yourself is enough." They settled into a quiet routine, Elias navigating, Liara planning their next steps. Neither spoke much of the dangers ahead. The universe was vast and filled with uncertainties. Yet, in the silence, a bond was forming, one built not on power or wealth, but on trust, respect, and the recognition that even someone considered small could make a difference. The first night in the freighter, floating between stars, Liara studied Elias as he checked the ship's systems. "You know," she said softly, "you might be more remarkable than you realize. Perhaps humanity is more capable than we've been taught to believe." Elias looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe," he said quietly, "or maybe we're just lucky sometimes, but that counts too." Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, a tapestry of light and possibility. Elias felt for the first time that life could be more than routine and survival. There was a future waiting out there, full of challenges and wonders, and perhaps, just perhaps, humans like him had a place among the stars. And somewhere in that vast, glittering expanse, Princess Liara realized that the simple human she had met in the tunnels was unlike any ally she had ever had, and that trusting him might just be the key to surviving the dangers ahead. The stars kept moving. The universe waited. And for the first time, Elias felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The freighter drifted quietly through the dark expanse of space, its engines humming steadily as Elias guided it along hidden routes, far from the usual trade lanes. Outside the windows, the stars stretched endlessly, each one a silent witness to their journey. Elias had grown used to the stillness, the slow rhythm of space travel, but he could feel a tension in the cabin, a quiet awareness that danger was never far. Princess Liara sat near the navigation console, studying maps of the surrounding systems. Her fingers traced the lines and dots, marking routes, scanning for patrols, and noting planets where they could stop for supplies. She was calm, composed, but Elias could see the flicker of worry in her eyes. The empire she came from was vast, and even with all her knowledge, they were alone in uncharted paths, relying on his ingenuity and the ship's fragile systems. "Are we far enough?" she asked softly, not looking up from the console. Elias glanced over his shoulder, his hands steady on the controls. "A few light days. The patrols don't usually check this sector." "It's quiet for now." He tapped a few buttons, sending false readings of a merchant freighter into the nearby sensor grids. This should keep them thinking we're just another cargo ship. Liara's lips curved into a small smile. You really know what you're doing. It's impressive. Elias chuckled, leaning back in his seat. It's not magic, just paying attention, noticing details, things others overlook. The hours stretched into a day as they floated past asteroid clusters and tiny moons. Elias navigated carefully, avoiding debris fields and remnants of old mining operations. He had spent years memorizing patterns, currents, and hidden pockets in the universe where ships could move unseen. It was knowledge no technology could replace, and it made the difference between being caught and moving freely. Liara watched him work, her respect for him growing with every decision he made. She had relied on highly trained guards and elite pilots before, yet none of them had shown the calm, precise thinking that Elias displayed. Here, in the quiet hum of the freighter, she began to understand that humans had something different, something unpredictable, flexible, and creative. I've seen so many systems, she said quietly, but I've never seen anyone navigate like you do. You improvise. You find solutions where others see only problems. Elias shrugged, a faint grin on his face. You learn to adapt. Sometimes you have no choice but to figure things out on the spot. That's what humans do. The journey was not without challenges. At one point, a dense asteroid field appeared unexpectedly, floating silently between their path and the next safe zone. Sensors showed erratic signals bouncing off the rocks, making navigation tricky. Elias adjusted the freighter's course, weaving slowly between the massive stones, anticipating the drift of each piece of rock. He guided the ship with steady hands, shifting momentum, balancing speed with caution. Liara's eyes widened as the freighter twisted through the field. I didn't think anyone could make it through there, she exclaimed. Elias smiled, though his concentration did not waver. You just have to see the paths others don't notice. There's always a way if you look closely. By the time they cleared the asteroid field, the sun of a distant system peeked over the horizon, casting streaks of gold and orange light across the cockpit. The moment was brief but beautiful, and Liara allowed herself a deep breath. She had been running for days, evading forces that were always just out of sight, and yet here, floating above an alien world, she felt a sense of hope she had not felt in years. We'll need to refuel, Elias said after a while, breaking the silence. I know a small settlement on that moon over there. They won't ask too many questions, but we'll need to be careful. Liara nodded. Good. We can't take unnecessary risks, not when so much is at stake. The freighter descended to the moon's surface, gliding smoothly over the rocky terrain until it reached a small settlement tucked into a valley. The settlement was modest, built with recycled materials, and its inhabitants were wary of outsiders. Elias parked the freighter behind a cluster of storage units, out of immediate sight from the main thoroughfare. As they stepped outside, the crisp air of the moon carried the faint scent of metals and minerals. Liara marveled at the simple structures, the way life persisted even in such harsh conditions. Elias led her toward the settlement, careful to avoid drawing attention. Stay close, he whispered. They're not dangerous, but strangers draw eyes, and we don't want to be noticed too much. They moved through narrow paths between small homes and workshops. Children played near makeshift gardens while adults worked on machines and tools. Life was simple, honest, and hard. Yet there was a resilience in the people that Elias admired. He knew that, like him, they had learned to make do with little and survive with cleverness rather than strength. They reached a small refueling station, where Elias negotiated with the owner using a mix of charm and careful persuasion. The process was slow, methodical, but effective. The freighter was soon ready, its fuel tanks filled, systems checked, and minor repairs completed. As they prepared to leave, Liara turned to Elias. I'm beginning to understand, she said softly. Humans, we often underestimate you, but you find ways to survive, to adapt. You think in ways no one expects. Elias smiled faintly, a warmth spreading through him. It's not about being better, it's about being flexible. You use what you have and make the best of it. That's all. Once the freighter lifted off, the vast darkness of space stretched before them once more. Elias guided them through hidden passages and sensor-blind routes, avoiding patrols and traffic alike. The silence of space enveloped them, but it was a quiet filled with anticipation, not fear. During one long stretch, Liara finally allowed herself to ask the question that had been on her mind for days. Why help me? You barely know me. I'm well a princess. I don't have anything to offer you. Elias glanced at her, his eyes reflecting the stars outside. Because it's the right thing to do. Because someone needs help. And because humans have a strange way of finding importance in things others overlook. I may be small, ordinary, but I know that sometimes helping someone can change everything. Liara considered his words, impressed by their simplicity and truth. She realized that human courage was not always loud or flashy. It was quiet, patient, and often unnoticed until it mattered most. Days passed as they navigated through uncharted sectors. Elias relied on instinct, experience, and careful observation to keep them safe. He taught Liara small tricks: how to read the drift of energy readings, how to notice patterns in sensor data, how to use old systems in new ways. She absorbed everything, amazed at how practical human thinking could be, how adaptable and resourceful it was in ways even her trained advisors could not match. One evening, as they rested near a distant star, Liara watched Elias as he examined a worn navigation console. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" she asked. He nodded, smiling faintly. "I've had to learn. Life on a station teaches you things no academy can. You see patterns, notice small changes, and you adapt. You survive. Humans are good at that." Liara's gaze softened. "I think I understand now. You may be ordinary by your own standards, but extraordinary by anyone else's." Elias chuckled. "I suppose so, but really I'm just me, and sometimes being yourself is enough." As they drifted further into space, the bond between them grew stronger. They shared stories of distant worlds, human ingenuity, and empire politics, finding laughter and understanding amidst the uncertainty. Each day brought new challenges: navigating around debris fields, rerouting to avoid patrols, dealing with failing systems. But each was met with ingenuity, patience, and calm determination. The freighter's small cabin became a space of trust, a place where two unlikely companions learned to rely on one another. Liara began to see that humans were more than what the galaxy believed. Their value was not in strength, size, or power, but in creativity, patience, and adaptability. One quiet night, as the freighter passed a nebula that glowed in soft shades of purple and blue, Liara spoke again. "Elias, do you realize what you've done? You've kept me alive. Not through force, but through thought, through cleverness. Most people would never see it coming." Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it mattered, because it was the right thing to do, and it's what humans do. We find ways." Liara studied him in silence, her admiration clear. In that moment, she understood something important. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries, and yet here was proof that a single human, with nothing but wits and courage, could change the course of events. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. Elias and Liara, traveling together through the silent void, felt the quiet thrill of adventure and the power of trust. They were no longer just a scavenger and a princess. They were a team, a partnership that had proven that intelligence, courage, and creativity mattered more than rank, size, or expectation. The freighter glided onward, the hum of its engines steady and reassuring. Beyond the darkness, new challenges awaited. But Elias knew, and Liara now understood, that together they could face whatever the universe had in store. Because humans had a way of finding solutions where others saw none, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. The freighter floated silently between the stars, carrying Elias and Princess Liara deeper into uncharted space. Every passing light year reminded them that the galaxy was vast, full of secrets, and yet fragile in ways few understood. Liara kept her eyes on the navigation screens, marking safe routes, while Elias adjusted the freighter's minor systems with practiced ease. They were alone, but not lost, guided by human intuition and careful observation. As they approached the outskirts of Liara's home system, the familiar patterns of the Imperial patrols began to emerge. Sensors picked up distant signals, ships scanning the sectors, their movements systematic and careful. Liara's hands tightened on the console. She had hoped they could return unnoticed, but the coup had grown bolder, sending patrols farther than usual. Elias studied the readings, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We can't go in the usual route," he said. "They'll detect us immediately, but there's an old freight corridor, one that hasn't been used in decades. It's narrow, full of twists, and sensors don't cover it. If we move carefully, we can slip through." Liara nodded, her respect for Elias growing once again. You always see solutions where others see only problems, she said quietly. I've begun to understand why humans are so underestimated. We rely on power and rank, but you rely on thought, on attention. That's something entirely different. Elias smiled faintly. Sometimes thinking is stronger than fighting. You just have to trust that what you notice matters. The freighter slowed as it entered the abandoned corridor, a winding path that threaded between massive asteroids and derelict stations. The walls of the passage were scarred with old mining marks, forgotten over time. Sensors flickered, some reading incorrectly, giving them brief windows of invisibility. Elias guided the ship carefully, adjusting speed and angle to make the most of each shadowed moment. Liara watched him, amazed at the precision. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and yet flexible. The freighter twisted, dipped, and glided with grace that seemed almost impossible for such an old, battered ship. "You're incredible," she whispered. "No one could do this but you," he shrugged. "I just pay attention." You'd be surprised what you can notice if you stop expecting things to be simple. Hours passed as they wound through the labyrinthine path. Occasionally, a sensor would flicker, a patrol ship passing too close for comfort. Elias adjusted course, sometimes using the freighter's own shadows to hide them. Liara began to see the ingenuity of humans, the way a small mind could outthink machines and expectations alike. As they approached the final stretch of the corridor, the freighter's console blinked with warnings. An automated scanning post, old but still operational, lay directly in their path. The sensors were powerful, designed to detect any irregularities. They had no choice but to navigate it carefully. Elias studied the readings, his mind working quickly. "There's a pattern here," he said. "The scanner pulses every 6 seconds. If we time it right, we can glide through without triggering an alarm." "It'll be tight, but it's possible." Liara's eyes widened. "Do you think we can make it?" He gave her a small, confident smile. "We have to, and I believe we can." They waited, counting the seconds carefully. The freighter inched forward, gliding through the first few pulses without issue. Liara held her breath, gripping the console as the ship moved slowly, inch by inch, through the corridor. Elia's hands were steady, adjusting speed, nudging controls, and reading the slightest variations in the signals. Finally, with a soft hum of relief, the freighter slipped past the last pulse of the scanner. They were clear. Liara exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. "You did it," she said softly, her voice full of awe. Elias gave a faint grin. "It's what humans do. We find a way when others see only walls." But their relief was short-lived. As they emerged from the corridor, Liara's sensors picked up activity near the Imperial Palace. Drones and small reconnaissance ships hovered over the capital. The coup's forces were active, moving quickly to consolidate power. They would have to be careful. "We can't land at the palace yet," Liara said, her voice tight. "They'll see us immediately." Elias nodded. "There's an old service dock on the outskirts. It's abandoned, but it connects to the palace through maintenance tunnels. It'll be risky, but we can get close without being noticed." They maneuvered the freighter toward the dock, slipping past patrols with quiet precision. The abandoned station was dusty and dark, but functional enough to hold the ship. Elias guided it into a hidden bay, and they disembarked cautiously. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and maze-like, filled with old equipment and storage units. Liara led the way, moving with practiced care, while Elias followed closely. Every corner, every junction required attention. One wrong step, and they could alert the coup's forces. Hours passed as they navigated the tunnels. Liara's knowledge of the palace layout helped, but Elia's attention to detail kept them from being detected. He noticed small differences, rust patterns, old maintenance markers, airflow differences that no one else would have. Each observation allowed them to move faster, safer, and more confidently. Finally, they reached a section of the palace near the central chambers. From here, Liara could see the main hall, the heart of her home, though guarded and heavily monitored. She turned to Elias, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "I need to go in," she said softly. "I must reach the council chambers. They need to know that the coup is happening and that there are still loyal forces who can help." Elias studied her carefully. "I can't go with you," he said. "It'll be too risky, but I can guide you. I know the sensors, the patrols. I can tell you when it's safe to move." Liara's eyes softened. "You've risked so much already, I can't ask more of you." Elias shook his head. You're risking everything too. I'm just helping you do it smarter. That's all humans do. We find ways to make hard things possible. They parted near a hidden access point. Ilias stayed in the tunnels, listening and guiding, while Liara moved through the corridors, her steps measured, avoiding sensors and guards. Ilias watched the readings on his portable console, his mind calculating each movement, adjusting timing and predicting patrol paths. Hours passed. Liara moved carefully, reaching the council chambers undetected. She found the loyal members and quietly conveyed what she had learned about the coup's plans. The council members, impressed by her knowledge and calm under pressure, began preparing their response. Every decision, every precaution was influenced by the careful guidance Ilias had provided. Meanwhile, Ilias moved through the palace tunnels, checking routes and ensuring that no surprises would reach Liara. He found hidden maintenance shafts, old ventilation passages, and unused service elevators that allowed him to monitor movements without being seen. His mind worked quickly, mapping paths and timing windows, every human instinct tuned to problem-solving and observation. By the time Liara had spoken with the council, Ilias had cleared paths, disabled automated alerts, and prepared contingencies. The coup's forces moved blindly, unaware of the hidden human mind orchestrating safe movement through the palace. When Liara emerged from the chambers, her expression was determined, her steps confident. She had done what needed to be done, and she owed her safety and success to Ilias' guidance. She found him waiting at a discreet junction, a small smile on his face. "You made it," Ilias said quietly. Liara smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you. Humans, you are remarkable. I've underestimated you my whole life, and I see now that your strength lies not in power, but in thought, in patience, in seeing what others overlook." Ilias shrugged, a faint blush on his cheeks. "I'm just a human, but sometimes being human is enough." Together, they moved toward the palace exit, where loyal forces were quietly assembling. Their careful planning and quiet ingenuity had kept them safe. And now, with allies prepared and aware, they could face the challenges of reclaiming control without unnecessary risk or confrontation. As they looked out over the city from a high balcony, Ilias and Liara realized something important. The galaxy might underestimate humans, might dismiss them as small, fragile, or ordinary, but their creativity, patience, and courage allowed them to accomplish the impossible. Liara turned to Ilias. "You've done more than anyone could have expected. You've shown that humans are capable of so much more than the galaxy gives them credit for." Ilias smiled faintly, feeling a warmth he had never known before. "I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it mattered, and sometimes that's enough." The stars stretched endlessly above the palace, a silent reminder of the universe's vast possibilities. Humans, small in size but limitless in ingenuity, could change events, influence outcomes, and make the impossible possible. Ilias had proven it, not with power, not with weapons, but with thought, courage, and the simple determination to do what was right. The palace lights glimmered below, and Ilias knew that the next steps would be challenging, but not impossible. With trust, creativity, and determination, humans could face any obstacle, even a galaxy in turmoil. And for the first time, he realized that his life, small and ordinary as it had seemed, could leave a mark on the stars themselves. The palace was quiet now, though the tension in the corridors was palpable. Loyal council members had taken positions. Guards who had remained faithful to the Empire moved silently through the halls, and every chamber was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation. Ilias and Princess Liara stood together near a balcony overlooking the capital, the glow of the city stretching across the horizon. The stars above mirrored the lights below, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the delicate balance of power within it. Liara looked at Ilias, her expression serious yet filled with trust. "We have the advantage now," she said softly. "We've outmaneuvered the coup without raising alarms or creating chaos, but the hardest part is ahead. We must convince the citizens and remaining loyal forces that the Empire is intact and that they can follow us safely." Ilias nodded, understanding the weight of the task. "It's not about force," he said. "It's about clarity. People respond when they understand the situation and see a path forward. Humans, we do well with communication, with clear plans." Liara smiled faintly. "Then we will use it." They moved through the palace corridors, each step deliberate. Ilias guided her, pointing out routes that avoided unnecessary attention, hidden passages that allowed them to reach key points of the city without being detected. Every decision relied on his careful observation of the palace, knowledge of the old systems, and understanding of human and alien behavior. It was a quiet form of leadership, one that required patience, creativity, and the willingness to act without being noticed. As they approached the main hall, where a public address system awaited, Liara prepared to speak. She knew her words could inspire trust, rally support, and demonstrate that the Empire was not lost. Elias stood beside her, ensuring that every system, every sensor, and every communication line functioned correctly. He adjusted minor technical details, made sure the broadcast would reach key districts, and checked for any interference that could undermine their message. When the moment came, Liara stepped forward, her voice steady and calm. "Citizens of the Zinthari Empire," she began, her tone carrying authority tempered with reassurance. "I am Princess Liara. I stand before you not as a ruler alone, but alongside those who have remained loyal to our people and our values. There have been attempts to disrupt our order, to sow fear and confusion. But we are here together to ensure that the Empire remains strong, that justice is preserved, and that every one of you can live safely." Elias watched as her words spread through the system, reaching every corner of the city and distant outposts. He adjusted the timing, making sure no message was lost, that every sector received the broadcast simultaneously. He marveled at the power of human ingenuity in these small, precise actions. One human mind, thinking carefully, could influence entire populations without raising a hand in anger. Liara continued, her voice steady and confident. "Trust in one another and trust in the resilience of our people. Every loyal citizen has a role to play. Every action you take contributes to the safety and strength of our empire. We have faced challenges before, and together we will face this one as well. Stand with us, and the future will be bright for all." As the message spread, the response was immediate. Loyal forces in distant sectors began to report in, confirming that communication lines were intact and that fear had been replaced with determination. Citizens, hearing their princess speak directly, began to take initiative, activating emergency protocols, securing resources, and assisting those in need. Elias observed quietly, his mind constantly scanning the data. The Empire's machinery was responding to human thought, creativity, and careful observation. He realized that humans' ability to understand patterns, anticipate needs, and act with both flexibility and foresight had made this moment possible. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, yet here, a single human's careful planning was shaping events across entire worlds. Liara turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and admiration. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. You've guided me, protected me, and shown me the power of human thought." Elias smiled faintly, shrugging. "I just paid attention. That's what humans do. We notice, we think, and sometimes that's enough to make the impossible happen." Over the following hours, Elias and Liara worked tirelessly. They coordinated supply distribution, ensured that loyal forces had accurate information, and monitored the Empire's communication networks. Every small adjustment Elias made, every clever routing of signals, ensured that the city remained calm and that panic was avoided. Humans, he realized, excelled at finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. In the palace's observation tower, Liara and Elias watched as loyal citizens and forces took control of key sectors, restoring order without conflict. The coup leaders, confused by the lack of resistance and the sudden cohesion among loyalists, retreated into isolated areas, their plans unraveling not through violence, but through careful planning, communication, and human ingenuity. Liara turned to Elias, her expression thoughtful. "The Empire has underestimated humans for too long. We rely on rank, machines, and tradition, but you've shown that courage, observation, and clever thinking are just as powerful." Elias nodded. "Humans are small, yes, and fragile in some ways, but we adapt. We notice what others miss, and when it matters, we find ways to make things work. That's what matters most." The sun rose over the capital city, casting golden light across the spires and streets. Elias and Liara stood together, watching as the citizens moved with purpose, calm and confident. The empire had been preserved, not through strength of arms, but through intelligence, patience, and careful planning. Liara placed a hand on Elia's shoulder. You've earned your place here, not as a servant, not as a helper, but as a hero in your own right. Humanity has a future among the stars because of people like you. Elias felt a warmth spread through him. For years, he had lived quietly, surviving, scavenging, and making the best of life on a small station. He had never imagined that his knowledge, attention, and human ingenuity would shape the destiny of an empire. Yet here he was, standing with a princess, watching as his actions influenced the galaxy in ways he had only dreamed of. Over the following days, the city and empire stabilized. Citizens were reassured, loyal forces regained control, and communication networks functioned efficiently. Every step relied on careful planning, observation, and ingenuity rather than conflict. Elia's presence remained quiet but essential, monitoring systems, suggesting adjustments, and ensuring that every action was precise and effective. Liara continued to acknowledge the importance of human contribution. She spoke to her advisors, emphasizing the value of observation, creativity, and intelligence, traits often overlooked in favor of machinery or brute force. The message spread across the empire. Humans were not insignificant. They were capable of remarkable things. One evening, as the palace settled into calm, Liara and Elias stood on the balcony once more. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and the city lights below twinkled like mirrors of the cosmos. Liara's voice was soft, reflective. You've changed my view of humanity. I will never forget what you've done, Elias. You've shown that even the smallest person can influence the largest events when they use their mind and heart together. Elias smiled faintly. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it mattered. That's all humans can do sometimes. Notice what others miss, act when it counts, and trust that our choices make a difference. Liara nodded, her eyes reflecting both stars and city lights. Then the galaxy will know one day humans are not weak. They are capable, resilient, and brilliant, and you've proven it. They stood in silence, the calm of the night surrounding them. The empire was safe, citizens were reassured, and the humans' underestimated qualities were recognized, not through power, but through intelligence, careful planning, and courage in thought. As the days passed, Elias became a quiet advisor, a trusted partner of the princess. Together, they oversaw the restoration of the empire, ensuring that communication lines remained clear, resources were allocated fairly, and citizens understood their roles in maintaining stability. Every task relied on observation, creativity, and patience, demonstrating that humans' greatest strength lay not in size or might, but in thought and action. Liara often watched him work, marveling at his attention to detail and calm problem-solving. She realized that humans were not only capable of surviving in a vast galaxy, but of shaping its course. Their adaptability, ingenuity, and quiet courage allowed them to influence outcomes far beyond what any other species expected. In time, the empire celebrated not only its restored order, but the cleverness and resourcefulness that had preserved it. Citizens spoke of the human who had guided the princess, quietly orchestrating the safety and stability of worlds without raising a hand in anger. Elia's role became legendary, not for combat, not for violence, but for thinking, planning, and showing that intelligence and patience could change history. Liara turned to Elias one last time as the stars stretched across the horizon. The galaxy has learned something important, she said softly. Humans are not to be underestimated. They are clever, brave, and capable of things others cannot imagine, and you have proven it. Elias smiled, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. I'm just a human. But sometimes that's enough. The stars shimmered above, infinite and full of possibility. Elias and Liara stood together, knowing that their partnership, built on trust, cleverness, and mutual respect, had preserved an empire and shown the galaxy the power of the human mind. They had proven that even the smallest, most ordinary individual could influence the grandest events when guided by thought, courage, and determination. The universe was vast, the stars endless, and humans, though small, had left their mark. Elias looked at the glowing city below, at the countless lives quietly influenced by careful choices, and realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy awaited, and humanity, underestimated for centuries, had just begun to show its true strength. And in that moment, with the city calm below and the stars bright above, Elias knew one thing clearly. Being human, with all its limits and possibilities, was more than enough to change the universe. He was just a human, until the princess risked everything for him.